There may be no one alive today who's brought more attention to the intersections of race, disability, art, and activism than our guest today. I'm aware of no one who has done so in so many forms: poetry, music, journalism, the founding of Krip Hop Nation, the books Black Disabled Art History 101, Black Disabled Ancestry, the formation of Sins Invalid, a graphic novel, lecturing on college campuses, and work in many other forms. It's a real pleasure to speak with Leroy Moore. Thank you, Leroy, for taking the time to talk to me.
Hey, thank you for reaching out. This is cool. Thank you so much.
So I'd like to just begin at the beginning. Where were you born?
I was born in the coldest place on earth, and that's Buffalo, New York. Yeah, Buffalo, New York, 1967, where they had a snowstorm, and my uncle lost his car in the snowstorm for 5 months. That's how cold it was. Yeah.
Wow. I was born in the same state, but not, I was born in the city.
Okay.
So as a kid, what were you interested in? And what did you want to be when you grew up as a kid?
Well, yeah, as a kid, I was interested in, oh God, so many things. My mom got me into United Cerebral Palsy Association at an early age. So I used to go to their summer camp. I used to do their wheelchair sports. Also, I lived across the street from WCCC, a famous rock radio station that had Howard Stern at the time. So I really wanted to be in radio, which, people were laughing at me because at the time I used to stutter a lot. So they're like, you on the radio? So yeah, so back then I wanted to be on the radio, I wanted to write books. So yeah.
Can you say a little bit about your parents?
Yeah, my parents were hardcore activists. My dad was a football player and was also involved somehow in the Black Panthers, and he used to have his own nonprofit. So I used to grow up in nonprofits. My mom was a nurse, always fought for my rights as a disabled Black boy back then. It was before, of course, before the ADA, and even before the Rehab Act, so my mom had to really push, my educational rights and stuff like that. Yeah.
So you say your dad was somehow involved with the Black Panthers?
Yeah, I keep on hearing that story.
You're not exactly sure how.
I'm not exactly sure how, but
Yeah. Well, how did your parents inspire your activism?
Just seeing my mom push for, me being mainstream, my mom getting me into United Cerebral Palsy Association, and that changed my life because that's when I, got into sports and got into the summer camp. So I used to be all around people with disabilities.
What sports did you get into?
Yeah, I did cycling and discus, track, and field, and also wheelchair soccer.
So
Yeah, I was at the Paralympics in 1988 in Seoul, Korea.
wow. So when did you first become aware of injustice and unfair treatment for people with disabilities and people of color?
Oh my God, that story is incredible. I was coming from my father's meetings, and my father used to have meetings in the community, at somebody's house, like a neighborhood, community. This was before, people had offices and stuff, so we used to meet in people's living rooms. So I was coming from that meeting, and I was stopped by a white disabled youngster, older than me, but still young. And he said, yo, you should join this organization that's fighting for curb cuts. And I was just in a meeting around police brutality. And I asked him, I was like, well, my community can't even go outside because we're getting shot by police. And I was like, will you put that on your agenda? They say, oh, no, we can't do that. So right there, I saw the difference between white, middle class, disabled people and Black, poor, disabled people,
And so is that the first time that kind of made you think that you could make an impact somehow for social justice?
Not that time, but the time afterwards, me and two other friends of mine, this was in grade school, this was like in the late 70s, and we were all Black disabled boys, and we started this letter campaign because we didn't see any people that looked like us on TV. I mean, this is like 79, 80, So we took it on our shoulders for a whole month and wrote letters to like Jesse Jackson and NWCP and Urban League and all these places. And that was the first time I was like, wow, I need to do this. Because we got back letters saying, oh, there's just nothing out there. And these letters are coming from people with PhDs.
So you did get responses.
Yeah, we got responses, but not the response that we wanted.
Yeah.
We got responses like, oh, there's nothing out there.
So what started leading you on a path of art creation and music creation?
The writing came early because being disabled, being Black at the time, you had a lot of free time alone. So I used to write. And my first article was in the Amsterdam News in New York, one of the few Black newspapers, in the 80s. But what really struck and also, growing up in New York City, because my family, moved to New York City, seeing hip hop on the corner back then in the late 70s, I was like, oh shit.
Where were you in New York? Where were you exactly?
I was in Manhattan, but the Bronx was like blowing up with hip hop. I used to go from Manhattan to the Bronx, constantly just to see the hip hop ciphers and things like that.
Can you say a little bit about the formation, the first formation of Krip Hop Nation and of Krip Hop?
Yeah, so Krip Hop, it's so funny you asked, because I was going through the timeline a couple of nights ago, and really, I was talking to Keith Jones, and Keith Jones is one of the founders of Krip Hop. And Krip Hop really got off the ground when I met Keith Jones at the DNC in Boston. And this was 2005, I think, 2004. Yeah, so we met face to face in Boston. You know, we connected, you know, on MySpace back in the day. But you know, he lived in Boston, I lived out here in Berkeley. So when we met face to face, you know, we talked about our love of music. You know, he grew up in New York too, so we talked about, you know, being, well, we're almost the same age. So that really started Krip Hop, that meeting, and also meeting Rob Denoise Temple. And what really, I mean, those two events started. Plus, I was involved with this radio show in Berkeley called Pushing Limits. And it was a disabled radio show. And I convinced the collective to do a 3-part series on disability in hip hop. And after that, it just blew up internationally.
Now, some people think that it's an innovation to bring disability to rap, but in what ways has disability always been present in rap?
Yeah, you know, disability has always been present in entertainment, going back to the blues. You know, we always, so you talk about blind blues artists, you know, there were disabled blues artists, so disabled, especially disabled Black people always were involved with entertainment. In hip hop, we can see the first movie called Breakin'. It came out in, I think, '84.
Yeah.
That had the character on crutches breakdancing. So, you know, we see that, you know, like I said, in New York, before hip hop blew up and it got, you know, commercialized, I saw a lot of disabled hip hop artists that used to come to the ciphers and just battle.
And if we think about the ancestors, can you say a little bit maybe about like the dozens?
Oh, thank you for bringing that up. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, I love that story, matter of fact. KRS-One, I gotta give props to KRS-One. He's an old-time hip-hop artist from New York back in the 80s. He has this video talking about the dozens, you know, the roots of the dozens. And the roots of the dozens really go back to, you know, our ancestors on those slave boats. And they used to separate out the ones that were disabled, the ones that had mental health disabilities, and they separated out in dozens. And those, our ancestors created, you know, storytelling. So they used the storytelling going back and forth. And that was the dozens. And they were forced to entertain the white settlers on those slave boats. So they used to go back and forth and tell stories and compete with one another. And, you know, we see that in hip hop. So when I saw that story, I was like, so Black disabled people started hip hop on the slave boats, you know, because of the deserts. And that story is just incredible. There has to be more writing on it. I'm about to go to my PhD. I'm going to do a PhD program at UCLA, and in the fall, I'm going to start doing some writing about it because there's really nothing out there except that video, you know? So we have to go deeper into it, you know?
Yeah, that would be really valuable to know about the ways in which, you know, disability has always been central to, you know, one of the most innovative and important forms of music that we have on earth
Yeah.
in ways that nobody knows.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, uh, and thinking about these traditions, I'm also thinking about the freak show for a second. Uh,
Yeah.
any thoughts on the
Oh,
role of the freak show? And
oh my God. Dude, you talking about more history of Black disabled people. You know, I understand that, you know, that people don't want to face it today because it's a negative kind of story.
yeah, right.
But that story is our stories. You know, we need to celebrate them and write about them because, you know, most of the people in the freak shows were people with disabilities. You know, and so and that was the first the first source of entertainment. So we could say that people with disabilities, our ancestors, were the bones of the entertainment industry, you know, from freak shows to blues to, I mean, without Black disabled people, I think the entertainment industry wouldn't be here.
And a lot of those first celebrities in the freak show were not only disabled, but they were disabled people of color, right? Like Joyce and
Exactly. Yeah,
uh,
exactly. Exactly.
Johnson. So, can you say a little bit about, just switching gears, coming back
Yeah.
to your work, the formation of Sins Invalid?
Yeah, so Sins Invalid started off with Patty Byrne and I. We were, you know, very close friends at the time. And we were at this cultural center here in Berkeley. And we were watching flamingo dancing. It was like, God, it's so beautiful. And we looked at each other, it's like, you know, we don't see ourselves in the local entertainment in that industry or platform. You know, we go to these cultural centers and watch all this art, but we don't see, you know, ourselves on them. So, you know, seeing that and having that in our brain and also being 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 political at the time, we put our work together in the arts and the activism and disability, and especially being people of color. It was like, you know what, it'd be a good thing to have, because both of us had filmed at the time. So you know, we had a small vision. We were just like, oh, we'll just get our friends together that are, you know, people of color with disabilities, and show some films and do some performance. And that just led into a big production, and it led into the formation of disability justice, that whole platform, you know, of people of color and people that are queer, you know, transgender, you know, to really fight back against this white disabled movement. So, you know, it first started off as a cultural, you know, expression. Then, you know, because we were both activists, we wanted to go even further, and that's when Patty came out with disability justice. So, yeah.
We're shifting a little bit to thinking about current day stuff and stuff that's happening immediately. And you've spoken a little bit about gaps in the ADA and the way that it's falling short, particularly disproportionately for people of color, thinking about physical spaces, employment rates. What are some things that you think need to happen?
Well, I've been seeing this for the last 5 years that it needs to be a national campaign for Black and Brown communities around disability awareness, because the Black and brown community is still stuck in the medical model of disability because of slavery, because of the history of racism and lynching and all that stuff. We haven't and because of racism in the disability community, that we haven't really stayed on course, where the disability community is into, disability justice and cultural expression, but the Black and brown community is still back in religious model or the medical model of disability. So I think there needs to be a national campaign, in the Black and brown community around disability. And disability justice leaders need to lead it, like Patty Byrne and Mingus, there is, and I'm involved in it, there's a national Black Disability Coalition, with Jane Dunham, and she's a mother of a disabled daughter, and she's been kicking butt around Blackness and disability for years. So we have a national disabled organization, but even today, where we see a lot of racial justice, flying off, and because of the rise of police brutality, there's more talk about racial justice, but once again, disabled people are not seen in that talk.
And that's, as you know, that most of the people who are killed or injured in police brutality are folks with disabilities.
Yeah, mostly disabilities, mostly Black and brown disabled
So
people.
in recent days, there's been more serious talk about police reform now than ever. What kind of things do you think need to happen around police reform and re-envisioning police's relationships, particularly with communities?
Yeah, first of all, I'm also involved with Port Magazine, and Port Magazine's been around since the 90s, and Port Magazine has this notion, it's not a notion, it's just something that we practice all the time, to never call the police. Because we know that those three numbers equal being killed or being disabled. So we had this workshop that we've been doing since the late 90s of never calling the police, and how does that look like? So I think one is that we need to stop using the language of mainstream. Police reform is a joke. I mean, that title should be laughed at, because we can't reform the police. So that's a joke, and we have to refocus our focus on the community. So it's not what the police need, it's what the community needs. Because we try everything around police. We try training, we tried, tasers, we tried, police commissions, we tried everything. But we haven't tried anything in the community. So we need to change our focus and really focus on the community, what the community needs.
With the change to focus more on the community, can you see some way that a re-envisioning of what we now call police could be present? That somehow those resources and those structures could somehow more clearly serve the community in a new vision?
Yeah, like I always say, cut the police budget. Bring that money back into the community. Bring that money to where your neighbor can have disability education. So if a parent has a son or a daughter with autism and their son or daughter is acting up, they can go to their neighbor and say, okay, let's do this together. You know, the neighbor does, the neighbor that doesn't have a gun, the neighbor is a neighbor. So really educating the community, I think that's one thing that's been missing is that once again we focus on what the police need, education and all that stuff. But once again, we come back home and the community is lacking all the services, mental health services, disability awareness. For example, when Michael Brown popped off, I came up with a pilot program for disabled organizations around using Krip Hop and using music to educate youth around police brutality. Nobody really picked up that pilot program.
So as we think about these needs, how can more young people be encouraged to become involved in activism and into addressing the needs of communities?
Well, they like my mother did. My mother took me up to the UCP office and introduced me to the executive director. And at that time, the executive director was a Black woman. I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, a Black woman with my disability is the executive director. And, seeing that in 1983 was big, So it's the same thing today. I mean, that's why Krip Hop wants to build this institute. So parents can say, oh, okay, let's go to Krip Hop Institute.
So what needs does the Krip Hop Institute have now in helping that happen?
Oh my God, so much. It's a new thinking. So we're still looking, we're going to begin to look for a building in LA. So a building for one thing.
So definitely in LA, definitely in LA.
Yeah, because I'll be going to UCLA in the fall. So, my whole PhD thing is gonna be the result of the institute, So yeah, definitely in LA, but not only in LA. That's only the main chapter. We are looking at adding institutes around the world because we're international. We just talked to Ronnie from Uganda, and he's like, yeah, let's bring the institute over here because he's been doing a chapter for Krip Hop for 3 years. So so we're looking to buy a piece of land in Uganda and doing a Krip Hop Institute in Uganda. So yeah.
So thinking about, we've talked about a lot of different forms that you've been involved in, and you're still at a very early stage in your impact, and you're building new things and doing things. But as we look back at your career and your life so far, what are you most proud of?
Oh God, it's so much. It's so much. Well, if I had to pick one, I think it was 2 years ago, before the pandemic, Krip Hop held an all-African disabled musician tour. So we brought disabled African musicians from Africa to here to do a tour. So we had We had artists from Tanzania. We had artists from the Congo, from South Africa. This is huge because we did it all on an SSI budget. So we didn't get no grants for this. This is all from straight out of the podcast.
Oh my goodness.
And we did it. We had, and you know, people came into like one bedroom apartment, you know, people slept on the floor, but we did it, you know. We did like 5 shows all around the Bay Area. You know, people left with awards and stuff. So that was one of the big things in Krip Hop that I think that we did, you know.
So, and it's really consistent with your idea of just wanting to increase international impact.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Now, you've done so many different forms of music and forms of art. Are there other forms of music and art that you haven't done yet that you'd like to?
Wow. Not really. Not really. You know, me and Keith been talking a lot because me and Keith are like, okay, it's time to retire. And it's like, yeah, you know, we both don't want to do this when we're 70, 80 years old. But we were talking about doing a film documentary on Krip Hop. That's huge. We just did the theme song of Rising Phoenix.
For the Paralympics?
Yeah, that's on Netflix. And that's up for an Emmy. So we'll know.
That's amazing. So that's for the Paralympics that you did that, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So are there other people and organizations that you would like to work with that you haven't had a chance to yet?
Oh my God, I would love to, well, people I love to work with Stevie Wonder. Organizations I would love to work with. I would love to work with Apple. I think Apple would really be interested in Krip Hop and how we use the internet and how we use equipment to make music internationally. I think Apple would like that. So I'd like to work with Apple. I would like, we just got off the phone a couple weeks ago to this new hip hop museum that's gonna open in New York. And that's huge because I've been trying to get to them for years. But we're talking about doing programs for the new hip hop museum.
Awesome. So now you may have already answered this, but what currently are you working on that you're most excited about?
Yeah, it's the Krip Hop Institute. The Krip Hop Institute, you know, it's taking over a building, having 3 or 4 floors. You know, the first floor is the visual arts because we hire disabled visual artists to do original pieces for us. So we've been doing that for 4 years, and so we have pieces that just stacked in my little apartment. So yeah, so a visual art gallery, studio, a library, and an international floor where we can have computer screens all over the floor, so different chapters of Krip Hop can talk to each other.
Now, where would people learn more about the Krip Hop Institute if they wanted to know more about the project?
It's good timing because we just got finished. Well, we will be finished with our new website. That's go up soon. And the new website would have that information on the Krip Hop Institute. Yeah.
So I'll check back with you and you can let me know what the URL is when that
Yeah,
goes.
it's gonna be kriphopnation.com and Krip with a K.
Okay. Anything else that you'd like to say?
I like to say that I would like to see, I would like to see more international work between disabled people. You know, I would like to see more Black disabled women, you know, get into Krip Hop. I would like to see, yeah, I'd just like to see more collaborations outside of the internet. I think we have a lot in social media, but once you go outside physically, there's really very few programs that carries the vision of Krip Hop, you know.
So as you think about encouraging these kinds of collaborations and the role social media might play, are there social media handles, and I know you're very active in social media, that you want to mention that folks can kind of keep in touch?
Well, of course, the National Black Disability Coalition, you can get their website, for magazine, of course, Krip Hop, on the Harriet Tubman Collective, they're a Black Disability Collective, they're on Facebook. Soul Touching Experience, that's with Keith Jones, and matter of fact, Krip Hop went under Keith Jones LLC. So we're part of that, and you know we're doing some really big things. We want to start a Krip Hop channel where we show movies and stuff. So that's coming out. Yeah.
Awesome. So, and I'll touch base with you again about maybe other URLs and stuff to share with folks.
Yeah.
It's been a real honor to get a chance to talk with you in person, sort of. We're in the pandemic, so you're in Berkeley and I'm in Waikiki right now. But I want to thank you again for taking the time to talk with me and for all of your work. And it's been a really a wonderful pleasure to get to speak with you.
Yeah, thanks for reaching out and thanks for doing the work.
Thank you.
Okay.